I now invite the audience to watch a short video clip on a remarkable keynote speaker, Ms. Chandrika Tandon.
नमामि नारायण पाद पंकजम् करोमि नारायण पूजानं सदा वदामि नारायण नामनिष्फलम् स्मरामि नारायण तत्त्वम् अव्ययम् स्मरामि नारायण तत्त्वम् अव्ययम् स्मरामि नारायण तत्त्वम् अव्ययम् नारायण 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 Music is love, music is light, and music is laughter, and let's all be surrounded by love, light, and laughter. And thank you for the music.
It is my honor and pleasure to now invite the keynote speaker for this year's Hansa Mehta Memorial Lecture, Ms. Chandrika Tandon. Ma'am, the floor is yours.
Can you all hear me? So the song that was played was not the Grammy-winning song. The song that was played was actually a song from my earlier Grammy-nominated album, Soul Call, which was nominated in 2011. It was an 8-syllable chant which somehow got a cult following. I'm so honored to be here. I'm honored to be here because it's such a magnificent confluence of two circumstances, the International Women's Day and commemorating this amazing lady, Dr. Hansa Mehta, who I didn't know a lot about until I started to get involved in looking at what she had done. And I want to start, and Ambassador Harish, thank you so much for having me here. It really means a lot to me to be here. I want to start this conversation with a completely reverent salute to Dr. Hansa Mehta. She saw things 100 years before we did. She crossed the seas when it was so difficult for women to cross the seas, to write out declarations which last until today. She championed women's education. She died at the ripe old age of 98, and she championed women's education for a very long time. And she was involved in drafting the Indian Constitution, which is still one of the most robust constitutions that we have. I mean, what an extraordinary woman. I mean, she lived a life of purpose which was much bigger than herself. And she harnessed her entire power to make that happen. So I'd like all of you to give a big round of applause. And Dr. Hansa Mehta, wherever you are, this is for you. You know, we can talk about a lot of things today, and I was thinking about this. I mean, there's so many macro things we can talk about, you know, the global south, women's rights, gender equality, but that's not what I want to talk about, because I've been thinking a lot about what made this woman do what she did, and what are the lessons that we can learn for all of us. What are the lessons that I have learned from this in my own life, and what are the lessons we can take? And there are two words that I'm going to throw out here, and I want you, you know, power and purpose. Power and purpose. And if you walk out of here, and I walk out of here, all of us walk out of here, with an inkling, with an idea that that power and that purpose means something to us in our own lives, that would have been, we would all come together to make the planet a better place. Our playpens may not be the exact same playpens that Dr. Hansa Mehta had, but each of us has our own playpens. So to me, I want to talk about power and purpose. What is power? Power is Shakti. How many of you have heard the term Shakti? I see a lot of people from South Asia. Shakti is one of the most ancient terms revered by sages in many traditions. In the Vedic tradition, 8,000 years old, Shakti was the driving force. Shakti was the creative force. Shakti was the dynamic force. Shakti was the living force of the cosmos. That's how Shakti was seen. Power. Shakti was also seen as Mother Divine, which had all of the fount of wisdom. Shakti was seen as Mother Earth, the womb which gave fertility, the womb that gave shelter to so many. And Shakti is seen as every woman who is the center of every family, of every community, and exudes compassion and love. That is Shakti. And that Shakti is something that we've all possessed. You know, some possess it more than others. Sometimes the light of Shakti shines brighter in some of us than others. And so the question I've been asking myself is, why is it that certain times, even though we all have this innate power, why is it that sometimes we're not able to shine as brightly as we could? And what made a leader like Hansa Mehta, a pioneer like Hansa Mehta, take that power and do something so big with it? And I wanted to draw on my own life, because my whole life has been a struggle with Shakti. It's been a struggle with trying to find my own power. Because in a lot of ways, I have no business being here. You know, I know many of you may come from very traditional Indian families. I turned 70 a few months ago. And so, you know, you can understand what it was like growing up in Chennai, in traditional Chennai, many, many years ago. I was meant to be an honorable homemaker. There's nothing wrong with that. I watched my mother buying a trousseau for me when I was 3 years old. From the time I was 3 years old, she'd be exchanging Conjeevaram saris, which had a little bit of gold, to get a steel tumbler, so that, you know, she had 2 daughters, which is an unbelievable burden. So that path was laid out for me. That path was laid out for me by other people. But my dreams were different. That wasn't where I was going. I did not want to be a homemaker. I dreamt of faraway lands. I mean, we hear of Dr. Hansa Mehta reading James Fenimore Cooper. I was reading Thackeray. I was reading The History of Pendennis. I was reading Shakespeare. I was reading hundreds of poems. So my lands were far away. My visions were far away. So I was looking for a different world. I had different ideas. But having a dream is one thing, but harnessing one's power to make the dream come to life is a totally other thing. It requires a Herculean effort. And when I wanted to go to a boys' college to study business, I had to go on a hunger strike. And by the way, my mother, who's 93, is still alive. And if anyone knows my mother, which some of you do, it is a Herculean feat. I went on a 2-day hunger strike to go to college. And similarly, when I was at McKinsey and I decided I was going to try to stay the course to make partner at McKinsey, which was a whole other challenge, I didn't see the light of day. in my 20s and my 30s, I just worked like a dog. I really worked very, very hard. So I had to give it all to harness that power. And similarly, later on, when I decided to form my own company, I just took all my savings of my 12 years of work, which was considerable, with a brand new baby and a husband who was also setting up his life. I put every cent in realizing that dream because I believed that I could do something. I could have failed miserably and I would truly have been a pauper because I'd have had to start at the bottom of the shelf. But somehow it worked. It was lucky. But it required a lot of power. The barriers, though, in power were, of course, the effort, but the bigger barrier were the internal barriers. You know, when you start to look at yourself, we find that very often there's a grand central station of emotions going on in our head. You know, I didn't have a runway. I didn't go to school in America. I walked straight into McKinsey, and I was a McKinsey brainiac walking into a boardroom where the client was paying you millions of dollars to the firm, not to me, of course, but to the firm. And so you were expected to perform, and I didn't have the runway. So you wore labels. Oh, I'm a woman. I can't speak well. I speak funny. I dress funny. All of it was true, by the way. But all these labels weakened me. I'm a woman of color. I'm a woman. And then my redefinition started. I am not a woman. When I walk into the boardroom, I'm not a woman. I am the best prepared person that's walked into that boardroom on that subject. I'm not a woman of color. I am the most prepared person, and I did my best to be prepared. So I made a promise to myself, I will never wear a label that weakens me. I will not wear a label other than what is the role and the task I am there to do. If as a wife, I am the best wife I can be. Sometimes I'm not a very good wife, but you know, we try. As a best mother, as the best daughter, but that's the job I'm there to do. So I define myself in terms of the roles and the jobs, not by any label that weakens me. The second part of this redefinition, and this is finding the emotional barriers to the power, is that I had to really think, you know, how many of you think of yourselves as type A people? Perfectionists. How many of you call themselves perfectionists? Anyone? Put your hands up nicely. Come on. Well, I would put both my hands up, you know, perfectionist. And perfectionist was a very great badge of honor. What does a perfectionist mean? That you are always trying to get to a better place, yes? And so because what you did wasn't good enough, you could do more. And what happens is you're constantly beating yourselves up. There's always this record going on in your head, I'm not good enough. And so again, the redefinition started. You know, the way I define myself is, I am not a perfectionist, I am perfection. This moment, my best self is here with you. I am perfection, you are perfection. None of you has come here with your bad selves. You've come here bringing your best self forward, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
So I am perfection, we are all perfection. And so once you start to understand that, and once you start to feel that visceral power, you are unassailable. No amount of DEI and policies and procedures and so on can come in place of your own emotions and your own strength in yourself. So this is the whole first theme about power, which is something that I want all of us to think about. Inner power and the work it takes. In fact, in Sanskrit, there's a term where they talk about Kriya Shakti, which is actually the work that you need to do, and Jnana Shakti, which is the understanding of yourself so that you can use your power in a wise way. And then the third Shakti is Ichcha Shakti, which is the point I want to talk about next. Purpose. Purpose is a very difficult thing to find. You all know the biblical poem, right? Do everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. There's a time for every purpose. Has anyone heard this song? So we're all conditioned. You know, even in the Hindu traditions, they tell you, you know, you're for a certain number of years, you're a householder, you're this, that. So you kind of go on almost in an accidental life because that's your path. But we are multidimensional human beings. We are capable of much more. And so finding the purpose and figuring out what our purpose is isn't something that happens one fine day and you say, oh, today my purpose has suddenly changed and I'm going to do everything. For some it happens like that, but you have to ask yourselves this question so that you move from accidental living to intentional living. We create business plans for companies, but we don't really create personal plans for ourselves. We don't even pause to ask ourselves, what do we want? I was so lucky that about 25 years ago, I truly, at the height of my business career, I had a crisis of spirit. A crisis of spirit when I came back from a deal in Europe, and I'm not a person who cries, I occasionally cry, but this is not my thing. I don't normally get around and weep every time something happens. But I wept on this plane because I was just asking myself, what is my epitaph going to say? Oh, she made a lot of money. Yes, I did. And she made lots of money for lots of financial institutions. Yes, I did. That's it? That's what my whole life was going to be? It wasn't. And then I said, okay, let me start to really ask these questions. What was important? What is the reason? What gives me happiness? How am I going to, I didn't ask the question about how I was going to serve the world. I started with how do I really live the happiest, fullest, most excited life, most joyous life I could live. That was a question I was asking myself. That led me to music. Because I sang before I could speak, and then gave up music for most of my life. And then I went back to music. I went back not to perform, not for a Grammy. I didn't even know what the hell the Grammy was at that time. I was just wanting to sing because I loved to sing. That's all I wanted to do. And I wanted great teachers who would teach me how to sing. And I wanted to, funnily enough, sing all these great shlokas and the names of God. I mean, that's what I was interested in. That's what I wanted to learn. But what the music did, and how many of you have trained or sung Indian music of any kind? Anybody here? There's the most amazing thing that happens when you start to work at the very high levels of Indian music, and that's what I was working in. Your mind has to quiet down. You can't get the sa to be, the note to be, holding your breath in a very consistent way unless your mind is quiet. And that led me to starting to quiet my mind, my very active, my very crazy monkey mind. I started to quiet it, and I started to get into the whole practice of meditation, and that changed my life, and that gave me the purpose. Why? What did meditation do for me? Meditation did two things. One is, I basically began to understand my visceral power in a very, very deep way. Because you find you don't exhaust yourself. The more you meditate, it's like your energy level is on steroids. And it's hard to explain, but that's true. And there's a beautiful Sanskrit saying, and I don't know if many of you have heard this, but this saying says, Purnamadha, Purnamidham, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadhaya, Purnameva Vashishyate. What it says is, Purna means abundance. Purna means fullness. What it says is, you are fullness, you are connected to a great source of fullness, which is inexhaustible. And the more you expend in giving away this fullness, the more your fullness will expand. Those were just words to me. But then, as I've started to practice, now this is a 25-year-old practice, I see it in every single moment of my life. Now, don't get me wrong, okay? This is not tickety-boo every second of the day. I mean, there's days when you are human, you're back to being a complete idiot, and operating at the lowest levels of your frequency. But in general, you begin to see this thing. The second insight which it gave me is as you go deeper and deeper into yourself, you begin to see the interconnectedness of all of us. You cannot be happy unless other people are happy. You really cannot. And that's why I think some of the, I'm going to make a broad generalization, people can kill me afterwards. Some of the richest people are some of the most saddest people in the world. I mean, because they are incomplete, they're sad, because there needs to be a purpose which is higher than yourself. If you're constantly thinking about my body, my kids, my this, my that, enough already, So you see the and Ambassador spoke about Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam. We are. It's not just words. We are. And so that's what got me into NYU. A shout out to some of my amazing colleagues and students that are here, some of the faculty. I feel that every time a student graduates or a research project is done, I feel like a little piece of me is in there, and I celebrate it with such joy. We have a business school in India now, and when the students are doing, from the villages they come in and are doing extraordinary things, I feel like I benefited by this. You know, what we have is a lot of seeds. We all have them. Hansa Mehta had a certain set of seeds, and she did this. I mean, I have a bunch of seeds. Each of you has a bunch of seeds. And it's not a question of a relative competition here. I have 10 seeds, you have 2. Who cares? We all have seeds, yes or no? Yes. And these seeds, when we sow them, we don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes we plant sequoia trees. And you know what a sequoia tree is? You don't even see when that tree is going to come. It's going to come many, many years after you're dead. And it's going to come out with resilience and longevity. Some of us are going to plant banyan trees, which will engender other roots. And some will just be a few gardens where 1,000 flowers bloom, and all that's okay. And that's what we are here to do. So I just want to say, for all of us to have this power, the realization of our power, and to have a purpose which is higher than ourselves, and to live our life with this purity of purpose, is, I think, the greatest lesson I take away from Dr. Hansa Mehta. It's the greatest lesson I want for myself. It's the greatest lesson that I hope each of you will take away in your own way about this. And the most wonderful thing about it all is the universe is really conspiring to make us all succeed. If you start to take one step, there are all these sayings, right? You take one step towards a higher purpose, and the universe takes 10 steps towards you. Synchronicity, if you have the wisdom and the time to step back and think about synchronicity, it is shocking, it is brilliant, it's fantastic what the universe does. Except that we are too stupid to see it, and we're too busy to see it. But it is true. So may the force be with all of us. And may we all be enveloped in blessings and go. We are here for a very short time. We're mustard seeds, as one of my teachers says. We are mustard seeds in this billions, in this earth that's been around for billions and is going to be there for billions. 80 years will you live? Okay, Hansa Mehta, 98 years. We'll give each one 100 years. Okay, we live 100 years. But that's nothing, guys. It's not a long time. And our goal should be to leave a corner of the planet better. A small corner of the planet better than how we came in. And that's my prayer for all of us. And may the force be with all of you, and may we be enveloped in love, light, and laughter.
Thank you, ma'am. That was a very enlightening lecture.